Hello, this is Christian Sullivan, and you're listening to the Sullivan Report. We have a very, very special guest. Former Queens East business agent, Philly Servider, will be here answering questions. We have a jam-packed interview, loaded chock full of information. You'll definitely want to listen to this. What made you decide to run against Harry in the last election?
Well, so we have the disciplinary system. Mm-hmm. All right. If we go back prior to that, on the productivity programs, mm-hmm. when we started the 10-7 program on collection on garbage, I told them right then and there, these numbers are wrong. We are not going to hit these targets. Right. We cannot hit these targets. They use the wrong weights. Mm-hmm. Okay? And sure enough, guess what? We didn't hit any of the targets. All right? They went out and told districts to dump that never dumped. Thank God, and I'll say this, thank God for Larry Riley telling Q8 never to dump. Mm-hmm. And thank God I never told them to dump. But you had business agents going to Q10, Q5, places that never dumped mm-hmm. into Brooklyn, telling them, you got to dump, it's part of the program. Mm-hmm. Because they wanted the dumps. The only problem is there was no safeguard in place for when we went over our percentage of dump to give us more money, because mm-hmm. now there's more of a savings. Right. So why would I go to a place like Q8 and say you have to dump when I know I can get all my dumps in Q7 because they always dump garbage and recycling mm-hmm. after lunch, right? And Q11 always dump recycling. I could hit my target on dumps between those two districts and exceed it. I would never have to ask Q8 to dump. Right. So I never asked Q8 to dump. Right. But all these other business agents, as Harry said, we fuck up this dumping program, I'm not going to look like an asshole. They went out and told districts to dump that never dumped. Wow. Districts that stayed out forever. Q10 was a parade every day after lunch, if you remember. Q14 was a parade after lunch. Q5, a parade after lunch. They just basically opened the doors. So now you got the dumping program that we sold ourselves out on. We lost a lot of jobs with that, mm-hmm. with relay men.
Why doesn't Harry see that?
Well, we knew they were opening dumps because, like I said, the councilman at the time was McMahon, I think, from Staten Island. Mm-hmm. He was on the Solid Waste Commission. Mm-hmm. And he said, they're going to be opening more dumps and building more dumps closer. So the dumping program was a good idea for the districts that were already dumping. Right. All right. Because they were going to get them for free anyhow. Right. But there's no way he should have told the business agent to go out and tell these guys they got to dump. Right. Because we were way over that number. So you had the productivity program on garbage. You had the dumping program on garbage and recycling. The recycling program was based on another false weight because when they put that weight in place, it was based on picking up recycling every 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. Okay, now you pick it up every week, you're getting half of the weight. Right. You can't achieve that number. So then they said they were going to establish citywide banks for collection. So if you didn't hit your number, you would have extra trucks in the bank. The problem is they didn't want to give you the trucks. Right. So now you could have a longer route and not make the weight and not clean certain times of the year, depending on what was going on. Right. So you had the productivity programs. Then the other thing was when they started the AFF program for $80 a day. Right. And I says that's got to go by seniority. Mm-hmm. And I said, no, you're not. Harry said, no, it doesn't. Remember, the contract says, the previous contract, that there was a side letter in the back that said all AFF operators, if they disband, they will follow their equipment. Mm-hmm. He says, so they got to follow their equipment. They make the money first. And if we open up those side letters, that means any side letter in the back, they could change. So we're not messing with that, mm-hmm. which at the time sounded like a good idea. Right. So they let that go, and what happens is the contract finally gets printed like 2 years later. Mm-hmm. And reading it, and I read, they changed the side letter in the back and wrote a new side letter that says this resends the old side letter and they will man it first. Which, if they were going to do that, it should have been by seniority and locations for the $80. So they wound up resending that letter and changing the back of the contract, but nobody knew about it, and that should have been by seniority. So that was another strike. All right, well, we'll fast forward a little bit. Then you had the progressive penalty system. That's another reason why the disciplinary system was out. You had the clinic that was out of control. Right. The way they treated people with their letters. And I had one guy said, I can't make it there. I can't make it there. Mm-hmm. My ankle's really bad. Mm-hmm. My doctor told me not to travel. He goes down there. They suspend him, right? Mm-hmm. They suspend him over the phone. Then finally, when he can get down there, he shows his doctor's note. Mm-hmm. The nurse at the clinic goes, "Your ankle's broken." And it turned out his ankle was broken. He couldn't travel. Mm-hmm. All right, so we had a fight to get him all his money back.
Wow.
I think with him we had to go to oath to get everything straightened out. So now you have the clinic system, right? That's totally messed up. They don't agree on. We talked about the disciplinary system. We have in our contract, everything, and our pension system was never in jeopardy because the city only has to put into NICEs for us, in NICEs, is if it doesn't make it 7%. Mm-hmm. All right, as long as that fund, NICEs, is making 7%, the city never has to put their end in. They'll take it out of your check for your end,
right?
But the city doesn't have to put their end. So they'll take your pension contribution. So, and guess what? If it made more than 7% or 8%, whatever it was at the time, the city got to take the extra money out.
Really?
Yeah. Wow. So if they made 13%, the city got to take the money out.
Oh, man.
All right. So all the years the city was taking the surplus out,
right?
They're going to cry about a couple of years that they had to put it in. All right. So there was never a problem with them losing money. But anyway, everybody was crying about the pension system and it's got to be fixed. And we paid a lot of money and a lot of time for a 20-year pension. Mm-hmm. We paid the 3%, and then we paid another 5.7% for a 20-year pension.
Right.
And it was written into our contract. It was done under home rule, signed into legislation. Okay, so I believe it was Patterson in 2010 or 2012. He signs legislation to take away the cops and the firemen's 20-year pension.
Wow.
But theirs had to be renewed every 2 years, and it wasn't written into their contract. Mm-hmm. Harry said, "We got ours written into our contract. We're good." Mm-hmm. They're stupid. They didn't get it written into their contract. Mm-hmm. They had it legislatively. It had to be renewed every 2 years.
Right.
Okay. The same thing with our 3/4 bill. Mm-hmm. We had it written into our contract.
Right.
And it was done under home rule and done legislatively. Now, just remember that for a minute. The 3/4 bill, right, was an offshoot because they used to have a Lodi fund. Mm-hmm. And the city would have to give the Lodi fund so many millions of dollars a year. Mm-hmm. And before the 3/4, when the time the 3/4 ended with the tier 1 guys and the tier 2 guys, because the tier 2 guys got 2/3. So by the time we got to the tier 3 and 4 guys, which is us, the fund was supposed to be so many millionaires. So you would get 1/3 from the fund, and you would get your 1/3 from NICEs.
Right.
And it was taxed. The city didn't want to keep putting their end in to the fund because you had to go through the city and you had to go through the union to get approved for the fund, which was another horse shit show because if the union didn't like you, guess what?
Right.
You didn't get it. So in order for the city not to pay that, they basically went along with the 3/4 fund because there was plenty of money in NICEs. Mm-hmm. Remember what I said about making money?
Yeah.
So they were no problem money in NICEs. So they established a 3/4 fund and it's done in the home rule. And legislatively, once again, the cops and firemen had to have their renewed every 2 years. The Hart bill was not done. It was done legislatively, but it was not written into the contract. But it was done on home rule. So now, the cops and the firemen lose their pension and their 3/4 for new employees. So what happens is they went after their variable, and I think it was Saunders or Camry. I got the letter at home from the city council that said this is wrong because this was done under home rule, legislatively and contractually. So they kept their variable supplement.
Right.
So if we did our 20-year pension and our 3/4 disability bill through home rule, contractually, and legislatively, why did we lose it? Because he let them take it.
Right.
We had a great lawsuit, but he went up to Albany for all the unions and let them change the pension system.
Why would he do that?
Self-interest. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I can only think of self-interest. I mean, there's more behind the scene. At that time, he thought he was in good with Bloomberg. Because you remember the first time Bloomberg ran as a Republican, we endorsed him.
Right.
The second time he ran as a Democrat or an independent, we endorsed him. Or no, it was a Democrat. Whatever it is, don't hold me to that. But we endorsed him both times. The third time we had Thompson running, who I said at the time, That's the guy. Thompson's a Democrat. That's who we should be backing. Not that I'm a Democrat.
Right.
But I was watching Thompson since he was on the Board of Education Commission and all through the ranks as controller. And all the unions decided they're going to back who they want. There was no solid coalition.
Right.
And Thompson didn't lose by that much. So if we would have backed him, we would have been good. And we had a rally downtown after Bloomberg won his third illegal term. All right? And if we could dig that up, it was a rally outside City Hall. And Norman Seabrook said, I didn't get bullshitted. They didn't bullshit me.
Right.
I didn't back this guy. He don't want to give you a contract now. You all got bullshitted, but we didn't get bullshitted. I didn't get bullshitted. All right? And what happened? Bloomberg refused to negotiate in good faith. And the unions used that as an excuse not to negotiate for a couple of years. But meanwhile, they basically endorsed them to run down there. I mean, it's just... So why did Harry let that happen? I think he let that happen because of his ties with Bloomberg. And guess what? It wasn't affecting nobody on the job. Just like when I came on, I changed it to 5 years top pay, 5 years full vacation. All right? It didn't affect nobody on the job. The problem was, even though it didn't affect nobody on the job, we all paid for that 3/4 to contributions to campaign contributions, feet on the ground for certain politicians, money from the union to their funds. The same thing with the 20-year pension. We all paid for that. So all the money we invested in that, we just might as well just burnt. That was supposed to be for everybody. You know, so why did I leave the union? So now all those things happened. And I'm like, and I'd be driving to work every day. And the best is, you know, the mayor talks about flex system and helping families out, right? So what kind of job can you have where you tell a guy he's got a wife, kids, his wife works every day 9 to 5. She gets him off to school. The father works till 3 o'clock every day or 2 o'clock. He picks them up. Oh, you got to work 4 to 12 tomorrow. I got to pick up my kids. Excuse me. It's not an emergency. It's not snowing. All right. Well, I got my kids. Well, I can't make it in. I got to pick up my kids. My wife can't change her schedule. I got my schedule. So now, the guy goes emergency, childcare. They give at the time they weren't giving you a couple of years. Now they give you 3. You get a birth certificate. So now you fill out a leave. What proof could I bring that I picked up my kids? So now you write me a complaint and dock me a day's pay. Oh, by the way, remember the accident I had in the lateness? Oh, now I got another complaint. It's within a year. Oh, that's 3 days now.
Wow.
But you see how it goes.
Snowballs.
But you know all this left wing liberal shit about taking care of families and flexible work hours. Meanwhile, we got the most screwed up system there is. It's not an emergency. The job will get done. It's by seniority. The guy can't make it in. How many guys go emergency for childcare because they change the shift? You know?
Yep, absolutely.
You know, it would happen. There was one guy in Manhattan 6. His kid, he called me one day. I'm working on a Saturday, and he goes, they're not letting me work my holiday. I go, well, what's going on? He goes, I got a steady day tissue because my kid's really sick. I go, well, the rule is if you got a steady day tissue, you can only work days by seniority on the holiday. He goes, but my wife's home during the weekends and she could take care of him. It was a Sunday or a holiday, whatever it was. And I said, but you know, that's the rule. So I says, tell me what's going on. How'd you get the hardship for steady days? He goes, well, my wife had the baby and the baby wasn't moving every day and the baby was kind of sick and we didn't know what was going on. So I couldn't leave her with the baby because she was really upset. So I go emergency. I said, okay. And he goes, I had so many and they started docking me and, you know, taking money away and writing me complaints. And they suspended me for this and that. And I was like, did you file for the Family Leave Act? He goes, what do you mean? I go, your business agent didn't tell you were eligible for the Family Leave Act because your kid is sick?
Wow.
No. So, turnout was 4 or 5 months later, the kid had cerebral palsy.
Wow.
And they diagnosed the baby with cerebral palsy, and that's why the baby wasn't moving sometimes, and that's why he had to stay with his wife. So I said to him, I says, oh, so that's why they gave you the hardship? He goes, yeah, because, you know, the baby was diagnosed with cerebral palsy. I go, did they give you back any of that money they docked you?
Yeah, right.
Or take back any of those complaints? Did the business agent ask? Oh, no, man. Well, they should have, because if you knew about the Family Leave Act, all that shit should be whitewashed.
Absolutely.
You called up. You weren't irresponsible. You called up and said, I can't make it to work.
Right.
My kid is sick. I have to stay home with my wife.
Right.
We got to figure this out. And the kid turns out having cerebral palsy. And, you know, the ignorance up there in that union hall. And the only reason I learned about it is because I read a lot. You know, I used to say, that guy's entitled to the Family Leave Act. That guy's entitled to the Family Leave Act. And they go, fuck you. He's not entitled to it. He's got to use all his time at once. I go, no, he doesn't. It's on a daily need basis.
This is the union hall saying this?
This is the union hall, because they didn't even know about it. And what I had found out was I was reading, I don't know if it was the Chief or the Daily News, there was a bus driver in Staten Island who had a family member sick with cancer. Mm-hmm. So he'd call up today, I need to take time family leave, which the transit authority would let happen, right?
Right.
The problem was he'd call up family leave and they busted him in Atlantic City gambling. So he wasn't doing it, even though he wasn't doing it the right way according to them.
Right.
All right, because I'm sure there's more to it than this. That's how I found out you could use it a day at a time.
Right.
But the union hall said no, PMD said no, and they weren't letting these guys do that. I go, it's wrong.
Right.
And you have to pay them if they have time in the books or change their chart.
Right.
But you see how the whole...
Well, this place is the sanitation department is a dinosaur. This is the only place I've ever seen that doesn't respect any kind of fire codes. You know, there's bird droppings all over the garage, which isn't healthy for you. Apparently now there's asbestos. They're going to spend millions trying to fix up Q8. You know, they've been fixing the roof for years now, and they still haven't fixed it. You know, we have leaking water. We have mold conditions. Harry couldn't care less. And my business agent, who promised us a new bathroom when he got elected, we had a tarp up in the bathroom for how long?
Collecting water?
Yeah.
Yeah, the same thing they had in Q7 on a brand new building.
Wow.
You know, and here's the best part. I took pictures of the mold in Q7 because they had a roof issue too. Mm-hmm. And the borough chief at the time, Beverly, goes, oh, it's all good now. They painted over the mold. I go, painting over the mold is not good. The mold is still underneath the friggin' paint. You know,
painted over the mold.
Oh, man. Who was that kid? There was a kid in your district one time. I think his daughter was sick or had to go to the... This is one of those emergency things. His daughter was sick and had to go to the hospital or something. Uh-huh. And he went emergency, and he was trying to hand the proof in, and they told him, well, you got to hand it in on your own time.
Right.
And I was like, no. He hands it in before roll call or at lunchtime. But since these guys take lunch in the field, he's going to do it now.
Right.
And that fill-in super fat fuck from Staten Island, Portello or Porticello, whatever his name was, said no, and he got stupid with him. And Binks was there, and I was like, and that was it, man. I just lost it. Mm-hmm. On that guy, you know,
right?
And he goes into his office and he calls 911. I'm having chest pains. So think about this: he's falsifying a Lodi with chest pains, making an ambulance come, right? Mm-hmm. But a sanitation worker that may hand in an emergency leave, right, gets arrested, for that and suspended. But they could falsify all the records they want and nothing ever happens. Goes on and on. I've seen guys getting suspended for stuff when it wasn't even their fault. So why did I run? Because I'm no bleeding heart left liberal, but I do believe the working guy needs somebody to stand up for him.
Why didn't Harry pick you to be the vice president when that spot opened up?
First of all, maybe in hindsight, I should have said to him, you know what? I think I should have that job because I'm smarter and I'm tougher than everybody else. Mm-hmm. And I know the job inside out, but it wasn't me. I didn't think like that.
What do you think of Dennis Schock as the vice president?
Dennis Schock is the vice president. He's the guy that when you tried to beep him and you couldn't get him like this time of the day and it's nice out, he'd be fishing.
Wow.
You know, take time to call you back. He'd be the guy that be at BME taking naps in one of their little rooms. All right.
I know that when I got they were giving me a complaint for not towing a wrecker by the metal dump that had gone on fire, and it became a whole thing, you know, and I call him up the next day, or that day, whatever it was, and the first thing he says to me, hey, Sullivan, let me ask you a question. You ever think of giving up that GU spot? Now, this is a guy, part of an organization I'm paying, $18, $16 at the time, a week, and this is the guy's first thing out of his mouth, not Sullivan, hey, you know, what happened? You know, tell me what happened, blah, blah, blah. No, and then he was trying to manage me on the phone by talking over me. Like, I know when I'm being handled, you know.
You know the funny thing about Dennis? We talk about how everybody got up there. I think I skipped Dennis. Dennis right, was always big with the pipe and drum band, the hockey team, right? So fraternal organizations, Columbia, he was everywhere, politicking everywhere. There was a sweep in Q5, and a lot of guys lost their jobs. So what Dennis told me, and I'll tell him straight to his face again, when I went to the next shop stewards meeting, I go, when did you become business agent? He goes, oh, they had to get me out of Q5 before the sweep.
Really? So they took care of them?
Yeah, they got him out of Q5 before. And meanwhile, all those other guys lost their jobs and were suspended and everything else.
How can they do that stuff
this? But that's what they did. They plucked them out. And at the time, I think it was Pete Scalatis told Billy Dokes, you're retired effective immediately. Because he had to make a spot for Dennis. So he took Billy Dokes out. I think it was Billy Dokes. Took Billy Dokes off the phone and put Dennis in on the phones. And then Dennis couldn't stand being on the phones. But Dennis had it good because he was in the carpool with Pete Scalatis and Jerry Marola. So what Pete Scalatis liked to be in early in the morning and gone before rush hour in the afternoon, 11, 12 o'clock. So Dennis got to go home and go fishing and do whatever he wanted to do. Because he's basically Pete's driver.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And they were so used to hit and run. You know what I'm saying? And that's how he got up there. So then Dennis did load a truck though.
Right.
You know, he was out in the street, but I'm sure he made a ton of fucking money like the rest of those guys that lost their jobs. And you got to remember, back then in BK5, there wasn't as many houses as there are now. It was abandoned buildings and lots for blocks and blocks, you know, forever. So then he always wanted to be a trustee. He always wanted to be on the board. So he pretty much probably begged Harry to give him the position. I did tell Harry, you fucked me over.
Right.
You know, you didn't even consider me.
What did he say?
Well, you know, he couldn't give me a straight answer. I go, listen, you know I work harder and I'm smarter than most of these guys up here. You can't take that away from me. And they tell you, Philly, you're full of shit. But even to this day, I could probably debate any one of them into the ground over any issue. But so we'll go backwards now. So remember we talked about Sheldon Dobie getting a complaint for the seatbelt?
Yeah.
All right. So it was like Memorial Day about 8 years ago. And we had some issues, and the guys weren't cleaning their house. There's a lot of backlog, and they did something to the guys in the district. There was something going on in the zone, and so guys weren't running down the street. They were taking their breaks and lunch, working safely.
Right.
And Costas was the borough chief of Queens West at the time, and Chief Austin was the deputy borough chief.
Right.
And this is all documented in oath. So Chief Austin says, I called Dennis Shock and says, what's going on? The guys aren't cleaning and dumping in Queens West. And Dennis Shock said, I got to do what I got to do. I got to do what Harry does. So then it goes on to Costas saying, Dennis, what's going on? We're getting work back. We're not getting dumps here in Queens West. Well, you know, there's a problem in Queens East, and I got to do what I'm told. And Costas says to Dennis, what does Queens East got to do with Queens West? He goes, I'm following my orders. We're doing what we're doing. Sounds like a great stand-up answer, right? The only problem was when they took the guys to oath that weren't cleaning from Queens 7, which at the time was Sheldon Dobie, shop steward, Pete Stringer, 75 shop steward, Louis Pascali, and Flynn, and Comboros. All right? And there was one other guy. They took him to trials. And they were taking us to trials and saying that we were on an organized slowdown.
Right.
And we said, no, there was backlog in the street. There was 2 weeks worth of recycling. The guys couldn't get the garbage. It was really hot. They took their breaks, took their lunch. So they brought in Austin and Costas to testify, and they both testified that Dennis Shock told them it was a job action.
Wow.
So Dennis Shock didn't go down and take the stand and dispute them and say they're lying. Harry wouldn't let him go down there to do that. Right? So those guys each lost, besides the truckman they lost going back and forth to oath, having their shift changed to 8 to 4 to go back and forth to oath, I think they each lost 3 days' pay.
Wow.
All right? And Dennis wouldn't go down there and raise his hand and said, I never said that. All right? Because Harry didn't trust him on the stand. So those guys lost 3 days each. You know what I'm saying? So that, you know, that told a lot of me, because he was more worried about himself. And he swore up and down he never told Costas that. And I said, and I even said,
he was probably worried he had him on tape or something.
I said, I took Dennis's back because I'm a street guy. I said, I don't believe Dennis would ever say that. You know, I said it, but I knew Dennis said it. You know what I'm saying? Because he just wasn't wasn't a clear thinker. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so that's basically happened with that. What else happened there? Oh, here's one for you. Remember we talked about we skipped the second layoffs?
Right.
Right? When I used to bring the water out to the guys, it was really hot. We were staying out. They laid off all those guys. We weren't supposed to be dumping. We were only supposed to be doing our target weights. And that's what got me into the tonnage, because I would know how much tons we picked up with how many trucks.
Right.
And I would know how many more trucks we could use before we touched any trucks in the bank. Mm-hmm. So every day I'd be with a calculator, adding, subtracting, dividing, and let the guys know, okay, today we got to clean. All right, today you don't have to worry about cleaning. We're over our number. So I would always have that all down. So what happened was, because we broke the bank a couple of times and came under, mm-hmm. they wrote, we had to write appeals not to lose the truck money, because originally they could dock you. So we wrote out all these appeals, like thousands of them, mm-hmm. to go to the tri-panel, which is Harry in the union, mm-hmm. probably, I think it was Alan Brower at the time, and maybe Klinger the lawyer, the city, mm-hmm. and then you would have a mutual party. I think at the time, it was, I'm going to say Marshall was the tri-panel. Mm-hmm. And they just blanketed everybody guilty and took away their route extension money, mm-hmm. for some of them, right? And or all their truck money. So like the guys in Q11, because they had no difference between their productivity numbers from the 90s mm-hmm. and the new productivity program, the 10-6 program, mm-hmm. they lost all their truck money and route extension money for the week.
Wow.
No matter what they did. They just blanket sold out everybody. And I said to the union at the time, we should reimburse everybody that lost a dime, mm-hmm. and take it from the union funds and give it to them. And you know what I got from Harry and the rest of them? Then we'll all get arrested for being part of a job action. I says, it's 3 years later. There's got to be a statute of limitations. Either way, your guys did what you asked them to do. You asked them to give back work during the layoffs, right. Only do their numbers, mm-hmm. and not when they lose money, you don't want to take care of them. You know what Harry says? Well, they got to learn when they're in a fight, they got to get hit. Meanwhile, if you would have told any one of those cunts up there that they were losing money out of their pocket, they would be crying.
Right.
Okay? But that's the mentality you had. They lost the money. They had a strike fund still in existence at the time. They could have took the money out of that and mm-hmm. reimbursed them all.
When you say cunts, you mean the union hall guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, not the Q11 guys.
No, not the Q11 right. guys. The guys up there, they was more worried about their own pockets again.
Right. Yeah.
How do you let your soldiers take bullets in the field?
Right.
There was a number of ways they could have reimbursed them what they lost.
Sure. Hey, listen, they stole Sandy money from me. You know, they said that I didn't work. And then I call up Patty Quinn. Patty Quinn's like, well, you know, I'm not really the business agent yet, but I'll look into it. And he never did anything about it. And they wound up docking me like $500. That was after that bonus, sign-on bonus that we got last time from the last contract. And then they came out with the Sandy deductions. Everybody got a deduction.
What do you mean he wasn't the business agent yet?
Well, he was in training or whatever. You know, he was like being trained by, I think, Jerry Marola or something. So I think Jerry Marola was the acting business agent at the time.
Well,
so I lost like $500-something, and they never did nothing about it.
You lost $500. I lost probably $600-700. So here we got. Let's think about this. You're worried about your men. The federal government goes in and tells the city, we're not paying this guys all this truck money and shranking and overtime on the truck.
Right.
All right? Because we're only paying you what we think we should pay you. Mm-hmm. So the city supposedly goes to court with the federal government and they lose and they got to reimburse the federal government. Mm-hmm. So now all those dockings come down. So guys call the union hall and say, I'm being docked. What can you do about it? And the union says, we lost the case. Mm-hmm. So I said to the guy that called me, I says, all right, tell the union hall you want to see a copy of the disposition of the case that they lost mm-hmm. for that money. I'd like to see on the public records, I'd like to see a copy of the disposition that you lost.
Right.
See, the city lost the money to the federal government.
Right.
But the union still had a right to recoup that money for the members because our contract says truck money mm-hmm. for the amount of hours we're on the truck. Right. And dumping money, and on a holiday,
right.
and the shrank agreement. That's a separate issue from if the federal government doesn't want to recognize our contract, they're right. only reimbursing the city so much. The union didn't do nothing. They let them dock everybody.
Right.
And nobody said boo about it. That was on the job. And mm-hmm. they just let them take all this money once again.
Right.
Which leads me to this. I don't mean to jump on you, but I had a guy call me the other day and ask me about the annuity money. Mm-hmm. In the truck, and I says, because now you're starting a new program with composting and 10-7 program, and I said to him, I says, on your check, and even on the computer, if you now the union, we got direct deposit. For years they wouldn't let us have it. All right, but we got it. You have direct deposit, and you go on the computer and you can see everything you get paid for. How come on there they're not telling you how much annuity money they put in your account every day when you're on the truck, and every week? You know what I'm saying? Right. And when you have 15 years on the job. So how come we never really know how much is going into that annuity fund? Which, by the way, okay, that I only found out while I was running. So we have an annuity fund, right, that we get so much money every day. We have an annuity fund for when you go on the truck, right? Then you have a supplemental annuity fund, right, for when you retire and you're off the job 2 years. And I got a funny story about that if you want me to tell you later.
Absolutely.
So we pay a guy called Alan Brower, who's a consultant for all the unions, to run this fund, all right? And it's either Policy Research Group or Program Planners. So I think all these years, he's the guy investing all our money, right? And in control of money.
Right.
Then I come to find out, he just administers that fund and gives it to a place called Columbia Investments, who actually does all the investing with the money. He's just making a shitload of money on us in the middle. Because he's not really administering it. You get a statement once a year.
Right.
You call him up and ask anything. He's running a shoestring operation, but he's making money on our money. Now that there's all sorts of laws about this, people making money on our money, our annuity money. And he's doing the same thing with the officers union. So why are we paying a middleman? And we have trustees in the union that are supposed to help administer the funds.
Right.
Why can't the union directly give that money to Columbia Columbia Investments?
Right.
Then they tell us what it makes, what it breaks down to, and then we help administer the fund. Why are we paying a middleman?
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't want anybody up in the union hall investing any of our money.
Right.
Because we see what happened with Norman Seabrook, right? With the kickbacks and everything. But we don't need somebody to make money on our money.
Right.
Once again, and that's what's happening there. You know, and getting back to Norman Seabrook, you know, so Norman Seabrook took his money, invested it, and got kickbacks. Who's to say that Harry's not getting kickbacks from any of these people he's letting run our money? Why do we have the same shitty eyeglass plan and dental plan for years?
I think they just recently changed the eyeglass plan.
Yeah.
They just tweaked it a little bit or something.
They tweaked it a little bit.
But during an election year.
Yeah, but here's the thing. All these people that, they call them vendors, the eyeglass person, the dental person, prescription, they're all vendors, right? They all want your business.
Right.
It's amazing how many packages come to the union hall at Christmas time.
Yeah.
It's amazing how many fucking...
I've sent a few.
Yeah. Thanks.
No, not to you, to Harry.
All right. How many, I'm talking about from the vendors. All right. How many sports tickets come there? I mean, getting back to the lawyers, right? The lawyers were on retainer for, I don't know, $1 million, $500,000 a year. Right. They had season tickets at the Mets, so they'd send the union hall the tickets they didn't use. And I've gotten some of them too, and they were great seats, I'm not going to lie. But they would get jet tickets. They would get U.S. Open tickets from the banks. So there's always something coming back.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So if those little things are coming back, why couldn't there be more stuff coming back? You know, and if we get back to...
just before you get on that, just talking about kickbacks, do you think that there's any kind of kickbacks? And again, this is probably speculation, but I'm just curious what you think. Do you think that Harry or the union gets kickbacks for these crappy trucks we have to use and stuff like that, or do you think they just happen to be crappy trucks?
Well, ironically, Dennis is in charge of the equipment committee. Apparently, maybe it's a licky now, but you know, there's guys that go down there to look at the trucks and they approve the trucks. You know, so there's supposed to be. How often does that committee get together and go down there? I have no idea.
Right.
I've only seen it happen once. You know, so. You know, it's all lowest bidder. That's what it comes down to. And nobody's making waves about anything because the city wants the cheapest shit.
And why would the union allow this once again?
They're not driving them.
Yeah, you're right.
They're not working on them.
I always said, if Harry had his office in my garage on the garage floor, yeah, there would be some filtration and there wouldn't trucks be allowed to be running in there and stuff like that and breathing this crap in.
But, you know, you keep saying Harry, but the problem is everybody around Harry's a yes man.
Yeah, well, he surrounded himself with yes men.
Exactly. So nobody's going to tell him, no, he's wrong. Like me, I was scorned. Because I said this from the beginning. I go, listen, I could be a business agent in the afternoon and at nighttime.
Right.
But I still want to go load my truck during the day.
Right.
All right. Or I'll load a truck at night and I'll be a business agent during the day. But I can handle both. Because it's basically working 2 jobs anyhow, 20 hours a day, whatever it was. And they were like, what are you, crazy? I go, I'll give up my release time. I don't need it. I'll do both jobs, you know? And they were like, totally against it. And the problem with that is, and that was one of my plans, is to take the release time away from a lot of the business agents, probably other than the top 3.
Explain the release time.
Release time, which we're going to get, is the city releases you to do union business.
Okay.
Remember I said you have to fill out those activity reports with the time where you were and what you did, and you still get your regular city check, and then you get paid from the union.
Right.
Plus the expenses. So that's the release time.
Right.
So I one of my plans was to cut the release time for, like, I think they had 18 spots. I was going to cut it down to like 14 in the street and 4. The vice president, the president, the 2 guys on the phone, and maybe one of the guys up in the medical, like Frank Assisi, because you need somebody up there to run everything. Everybody else was already back in the street doing the job, because then you wouldn't forget what the job was. But if you didn't never really do the job, you wouldn't know. And one of my biggest wake-up calls was, I remember my first day back in the street when I said I'm running. I showed up in Q8 the next day, and Harry calls me and goes, what are you doing? I go, I'm working. He goes, no, you got to go home. I go, I can't. I'm still on release time. I got to fill out some paperwork. I got to work. Use a day. I go, fuck you. I'm not using one of my days. Why should I use one of my days? Oh, you can't do that. I go, well, I'm doing it. No, I can't have you as a business agent if you're running against me. Or why not? So, and then I remember my first night was on the truck. I worked 12 to 8, the Tuesday after Memorial Day. And I'm working in a long walking section in Q7. And I was like, holy shit. Without this step, man, this job was almost impossible. Because I always worked on the step. You know what I'm saying? And that's why if all the business agents weren't on release time and they were still back in the districts doing the job, they would know what the job is and what's going on with all those safety concerns and everything else. They don't even show up in the garages, half of these guys.
No, my guy never comes.
You know, I showed up in the garage. I showed up at break, in the street.
You were always there. You were there a couple of times a week.
But not even that. I'd be out in the street at the break points and I'd meet the guys.
You were always involved. How many jams did you try to help you with? And you did, and it was great. And, you know, this guy, he just, you know, he talks about me behind my back to management, you know, and he thinks I don't hear about it. I mean, just all the stuff that goes on in this place. That's what made me really just say, you know what, that's it. I've had enough. You know?
I hear you. And a lot of guys say that. I mean, the scary part is, you know, we need more guys to say what's going on here, because everybody figures that I'm making my money and I'm going home. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They're making the money, they're going home.
How can we clean up this union hall, though, where guys aren't going home all the time and they actually come in and they stop by the garages and try to do their job?
Well, once again, you would have to go through the Office of Labor Relations. They would have to do their job and actually monitor these guys. All right, the mayor's office would have to order them to do that.
Would the International Brotherhood of Teamsters be a way to go, or they don't
no?
Really care?
The Teamsters Brotherhood. You know what? One of the things in the back of my head was,
what's that?
Get away from the fucking Teamsters. Go to Ask Me or Public Employees Federation. Why are we in the Teamsters Union still? We have non-union companies picking up streets, stores, and some of our stops with our metal that they took off of the Easy Packs. All right, so they're already doing some of our work. All right, they're in the streets. They'll never take any of our work. But why are we giving them a vig out of our money?
Right.
The per capita tax. They get so much out of all your union dues, which you mentioned before. So if you go to Public Employees Federation, see Norman Seabrook, you know.
I'm not familiar with him.
Norman Seabrook was the president of the corrections officers, right?
Oh, okay, yeah.
So now if we go back into benefits real fast. So when Obamacare passed, the Affordable Care Act, right? And they said there's supposed to be no prescription drug coverage, cap on prescription drug coverage, all right? All the unions were up in arms. But meanwhile, all the unions helped push it through. The Teamsters, SEIU, the UFT, everybody helped push it through. But now they can't have a cap on their prescription drug coverage, and they're saying the members are using too much of their own money. Right? But meanwhile, I hit my cap, but my wife doesn't hit hers, my kids don't hit theirs. So where's all their money going, I want to know. I may go over a little bit, but they're not even coming close, and like a lot of other members. So we get through that. So what does the union do? They turn around and say during election year 5 years ago, we're going to raise the cap to 6,500. Too many people hitting it. We want to help you. What they didn't tell you was that they changed the cap so it would increase their liability, so they'd be eligible for a waiver from the federal government, that they would make them eligible for a cap.
Right.
For 2 years. So they told you they were doing something to help you. Meanwhile, they're doing it to hurt the people that needed it the most.
Right.
All right. So they do that like that. And so what do they do? And I got the article cut out from the Post. They have Norman Seabrook, who doesn't belong to any international, right? Norman Seabrook files a lawsuit against the federal government, say that they should be allowed to have a cap. Wow. Of course, it's easy to have Norman Seabrook do it because he's not in the PBA, he's not in the Teamsters, he's not AFL, he's nothing. He runs all his own money and nobody gets a dime of it.
Wow.
And so that's like the things that they do to try to get out of this. You know, it just goes on and on.
You know, one story I wanted to ask you before you go is the story of Harry's son getting a job. I remember you telling me something about that, and I wanted you to explain that a little bit more.
Okay. Well, it's funny you mentioned that. There was just an article in the paper, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, and it talked about a guy being denied a city job because he was terminated from another one.
Right.
And now the city council wants to say, well, if you get terminated from one city job, it shouldn't be held against you for another one. So Harry gets his son a job as a motor vehicle operator.
Right.
But he's not driving a motor vehicle. He's handling the parts counter at CRS, the Central Repair Shop in Queens.
Right.
Which, by the way, Dennis Schock and Billy Corcoran either got to drop him off or pick him up and bring him to meet Harry to get rides home.
Right.
Or to get back upstate where Harry lived, which I don't think the kid was eligible to live upstate as a provisional employee. But everybody knows that's where he's living. And he takes a leave of absence. I remember, but I was in the union hall, and I hear Harry yelling, because I'm out on the floor. He did what? What did he do? And he's calling the lawyers. And apparently his son came up dirty. Really? This is what I hear, but his son no longer works for the city. All right? And his son goes out to Arizona to live.
Right.
Okay? Which I come to find out later was like a farm, like a detox.
Okay.
Okay? Now the kid comes back, all right? He's got a second provisional job in the forge at CRS, but nobody knows about that. But the commission has to sign off on this, okay? Then he's not provisional anymore, he's permanent. Because there's a little law that says if you're provisional entitled and take a test, all right, it doesn't matter where you get in a test, you move to the top of the list.
Wow.
All right? So that's how that whole thing happened. All right? So how many sanitation workers on probation had to resign? Are they eligible to come back? They almost tell all of them no.
Right.
You can't come back definitely to the same agency or back to city employment.
Right.
But yet his son did. So this was around the same time that Christmas Blizzard.
Okay.
That the department totally screwed up. And Harry helped protect management in City Hall.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I always wondered why, because they screwed up everything. And we had, by the way, we had privates come in and do our work after that. A year later, they gave up. We lost a lot of our work.
Right.
And they put GPS in all the trucks. So, well, if you gave my son a job, would I blow you up? Would I blow any years up?
Right.
You know
so
what I'm saying?
once again, his saving his son cost us.
Saving his son, not only his son's still working there.
Wow.
Setting his son up. Not saving his son, setting his kid up.
Yeah.
Because his kid was more important than everybody else's family that he represented. His own pockets were more important.
Wow.
You know, so just, you know, you see all this stuff going on and all the corruption. And it just, I used to drive to work every morning and I would be like, I would say a serenity prayer, and the answer kept coming to me. It was either quit, right, and go back on the truck and just keep my mouth shut.
I remember for like months you would come into the break room when I was at Q8 and you'd say, Chris, I can't take it anymore. And I always thought you were talking about management. I never dawned on me.
Everything.
Yeah, but it never dawned on me you were talking about more about the union, you know? And then when you left and you decided to run against Harry, which is such a loss for all of us that you didn't get it. I mean, had you been the president, this would be a totally different job right now.
Not even a loss for you guys, but my family suffers as well from everything I've done. Mm-hmm. I mean, I could have kept my mouth shut, right, and not stood up. Yeah. I could have stayed. I'd probably be a trustee by now, or even a little further. But, and I always told those guys up there, I go, and I always said it actually more at roll calls. I would tell the guys that my family's not more important than your family, and that's what I believe. My family,
you always treated us like that.
And my family's not more important than your family, but at least I have the conscience to say, I know I did the right thing, I tried to do the right thing. But I would drive into work every morning, and I would say the Serenity Prayer, and I would say, courage to change, courage to change. I said, the answer's right here.
Right.
Have the courage to change.
Right.
And I actually had the courage to change. Mm-hmm. I have no regrets for what I did. Right. I'm glad what I did. I think I would have done it a different way. Mm-hmm. I definitely think there was mail fraud involved, because I'm still wondering why would you use a mail P.O. box in Garden City instead of the one down the block from the Union Hall.
Explain that. What is it that you're concerned about?
I'm concerned about if you had to mail your ballots in,
right,
and you wanted it the most direct way possible to be counted. There's a post office 2 blocks from the Union Hall off of Water Street.
Right.
All right. I think it's Water and Catherine, or Water and South, one of those streets over there. But yet, the ballots were mailed to Garden City Post Office, all right, where I was told at the time, the people that run the election, that's where their offices are. So they go there, they pick them up, bring them in. But when I go do some investigating later on, they don't have offices all around. Their offices in Midtown Manhattan.
Right.
So why would the ballots go there to be picked up, to be driven? A, either they have somebody inside the post office that duked the bags, or B, from the time they drove from there to the Union Hall, they made a switch. Because we were following them, and we lost them on the BQE, and they didn't show up at the Union Hall for like a couple hours later.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Wow. They said they got lost, and they wound up in Williamsburg or something off the BQE. And these are New Yorkers. So like I don't want to play that card, but I still think about it all the time.
Of
you know
course.
What I'm saying? What could have happened in all that time?
And you still had enormous support.
Yeah.
I think they never counted on that. And this was without you being able to really go out there and get your message out.
Yeah. And very limited funds.
Yeah. And Harry Nespoli has never let Queens East, he's never given the support to Queens East after that, because he knew there was overwhelming support from the guys, men and women of Queens East.
Well, you know what? That bothers me to hear that, and I wish it would not to be true, but it probably is true. But I used to have, when I was the business agent, I'd have people, shop stewards from other zones call me asking questions.
Oh, yeah.
Because, I don't know if you want to end on this, but think about this. How could you have one job with 27 different rules on one thing? Why aren't all the rules for seniority and truck money and everything written down and it's done the same way from garage to garage to garage?
Right.
Why is it the senior driver is being told he's got a man collection, even though it's a half a truck, 4 or 5 hours truck money? It's supposed to be 5 hours, but in Manhattan, in some places, they only give the guys 4 hours. And then a senior driver is on a full truck of recycling. It doesn't say that anywhere in the contract book. That's a made-up rule from the union. Where does it say when new guys come on the job, they get 30 days, no nights, and out of town? It doesn't say that in the contract anywhere. That's a union rule displacing somebody that should be making money by seniority, especially now that they do the training in the districts, all right, before they get assigned. So the guys know where they are. So there's so many seniority violations. That was another thing I said. Where does it say 30 days? Oh, you can't do that to the new guys. But they're already in the districts doing relays at night. They're doing training. They know where they're going.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They did on-the-job training for 2 weeks. They didn't have that in the beginning. So it just all that stuff like that just goes on with we mentioned the truck money with, I get hurt. I'm a senior guy.
Right.
I work 6 to 2 every day in my district. I've never been moved. Now I twist my ankle on the truck and you're telling me I got to go not only work in another district, maybe another borough, and it's got to be 4 to 12 at night. And I got nobody to pick up my kids.
Right.
Or 12 at night to 8 in the morning on the west side of Manhattan all the way uptown.
Yeah.
All right? Doesn't say anywhere in the contract book if we get displaced, we lose our seniority.
Right.
But the union let the clinic and personal management division do that to deter guys to get back to work faster. All right, to stop them from reporting if they get hurt. Because they want to do what they want them. There's nothing in writing anywhere about that. You know what I'm saying? And you lived through that once. They made you a driver for somebody. And I said to you, technically they can't do that. They got to go by seniority. Detachments are by seniority. You can't force me out to another zone. So like all this little stuff. But again, I forgot the answer. It doesn't happen to them.
Right.
It's not them being displaced. It's not them having their seniority violated. It's not them losing money. You know what I'm saying? So that's what it comes down to.